lots I want to get through with you, Rupert. But first of all, can I get your reaction to Keir Starmer's, in my view, rather sordid vow to recognise Palestine? What are your thoughts?
Well, I just think Keir Starmer makes bad decisions, Kevin. And, you know, the Palestinian situation is very complex. I don't profess to be an expert on it. But I don't fully understand I can understand the concern about human rights, but I don't understand this fixation with Palestine when they elected Hamas to effectively govern them. In the same way, you've got Hezbollah in Lebanon, which again used to be a Christian country, and at the root cause of all this, you've got, or the heart of all this, you've got Iran. So it's a very complex situation, and I think it's not one really that we should be concerned with. I think we should be concerned mainly with what's happening in the UK, with our economy, and serving the interests of the British people. And I think it's extraordinary that Keir Starmer spent so much time in this first year actually concentrating on international relations rather than looking after the electorate here, which should be at the top of his agenda.
Yeah, that was my shock, because when I heard, I think it was over the last weekend, that he'd called an emergency cabinet meeting, calling back the various secretaries of state and ministers from their holidays because it was that urgent, I assumed it would be to address the rising amount of unrest around the country, the protests outside asylum seeker hotels, and indeed the continuing arrival of more and more migrants across the channel. You might be interested to hear, by the way, Rupert, if you don't know already, we think 900 came across today, so quite a bunch.
I saw that, Kevin. Yeah, I saw 900. I mean, it's
pretty,
it really is
enormous.
The stopping the boats and smashing the gangs, it really does appear to be succeeding, doesn't it? At the moment?
Yes, it's absolute triumph. But I thought that would be what the emergency meeting would be about. Instead, it was about recognising Palestine. I mean,
Jeremy Bowen talks about, you know, how this is sort of going to highlight and prize open, I think he called it, further peace talks in the region. And the BBC, as we know, is institutionally pro-Palestine, pro-Islam. And at the end of the day, it's, as we know, a national monopoly, which does not reflect, in my opinion, the view of the majority of British people. And just look at the viewing numbers. People are turning off in increasingly great numbers. But unfortunately, they still are sort of shoehorned into paying an extortionate compulsory BBC TV licence for non-payment of which can land you in prison. I think it's the only private debt you can end up in prison for.
Do you still pay for your
with a criminal record? So yeah, not good.
Yeah, do you still pay for your BBC TV licence after they pretty much libelled you? They've just had to issue a grovelling apology to you, haven't they?
Well, they did over this wretched declaration on the rape gang crowdfunder, which in the event we'd done entirely properly. We'd actually done it in consultation with the Electoral Commission. And we had a mischievous ex-employee who was trying to cause trouble with the commissioner, a man called Daniel Greenberg, who opened an inquiry and closed it within a very short space of time. But he did actually announce the fact that he was opening it, knowing he was going to close it, which could have caused a lot of trouble for us because we had about 40 or 50 vulnerable rape gang victims coming into Parliament the following week. In the event, it sorted itself out, I think, very quickly because there was nothing to actually explain.
But the BBC ran the story, right? And
the BBC, somebody leaked it to the BBC, which I warned the Commissioner would happen. And indeed, it did happen. Mischief making. The BBC actually carried the story. They had further detail to that, which the Commissioner had announced. And I made a formal complaint, and in the end, they had to apologise. But I mean, everybody, I think, knows that, number one, I don't take my parliamentary salary. I give it to charity. And number two, with the rape gang inquiry, not only am I never going to be a beneficiary of anything, I actually have given a sizable amount of money to that crowdfunder because I consider it to be a blot on our national history. And I intend to make sure that we get to the bottom of what happened, why it was overlooked by so many organs of the British state. That's the police, it's the social services, it's the doctors, it's the NHS. It's just about every part of the British establishment, local government, who literally crossed and walked along the other side of the street and ignored these very vulnerable members of our society who were being institutionally raped and abused by Pakistani Muslim men, which they seemed to think was okay.
Shocking, shocking. Are you continuing with your independent inquiry? Do you not trust Labour's now belatedly announced national inquiry?
We are definitely not stopping, Kevin. We raised a relatively small sum of money by the J inquiry standards, which I think cost 186 million. We've raised around 600,000. But no, we're going to continue. Some of the things that we're finding are revolting, unacceptable, and I think show that this was happening across the country. And if the police actually chose to link their databases, they'd find that it's a repetitive pattern, probably in well over 100 towns and cities across the UK. But I don't think the establishment wants to actually own up to the size of the issue. I think they fear they're going to be accused of being racist. I think they're going to find they're accused of their post-war experiment with multiculturalism has failed. And clearly the Labour vote, the remaining Muslim Labour bloc vote, which is a big part of this, which hinges on the what I call deficient postal voting system, that's also going to be exposed. So it's an absolute mess, and no, we're not stopping for the simple reason that I don't know about you, but I don't trust the government, who was reluctant to have an inquiry in the first place, to mark their own homework in the same way that we watch them floundering around trying to avoid paying compensation to the sub-postmasters who were mistreated by what was a government company. We've seen the infected blood scandal where people haven't received their compensation. And I thought it was interesting that I think it was Charles Moore was saying today that he thinks we should reverse the responsibility and make the government pay compensation unless they can justify not paying it in cases like this where clearly they're at fault. But as you know, I have very little faith in the state delivering anything. I watch Parliament, which I think is dysfunctional. I watch the civil service, and particularly the permanent secretaries, who are the ones with power now. I watch a bloated state giving us less and less good service, more and more working from home, bigger and more bloated pensions when compared to the private sector. And I have little faith that the state is capable of delivering anything other than a very second-rate service at a hugely overpriced cost.
Yeah, lest we forget, Rupert, this government was dragged kicking and screaming into having to announce a national inquiry because they tried desperately not to, and we know why they tried not to. That's because the truth about this appalling scandal, the worst sex crime scandal in British history, estimated possibly to have as many as 250,000 victims, young white girls prominently, and many of them underage. Most of this unfolded in Labour council areas. There are a lot of Labour officials involved. So, and also Keir Starmer, although he likes to boast about it, his record when he was the Director of Public Prosecutions from 2008 to 2013, given that was the period when the worst of the rape gang scandal was unfolding, unbeknownst to us, his track record on bringing these awful men to justice wasn't exactly fantastic. So lots of reasons for Labour to keep this quiet. They've eventually announced this inquiry, but I think you're right to be suspicious about it. I certainly am. We've got to look out for the parameters on that inquiry when they announce them. I just wanted to get your take, Rupert, if you don't mind, on a story that concerns the rape gang scandal that came out today, which just is shocking, but kind of underlines or reminds us just how awful this was, the betrayal of these poor kids by the authorities. So, 5 vulnerable young women exploited when they were children by the Rotherham grooming gangs have come forward to say that they were also raped by local police officers. One of the victims says that she was raped from the age of 12 by a copper who told her that if she didn't consent, he would hand her back to the gangs. I mean, how low can this scandal sink?
I think that was the South Yorkshire Police, wasn't it? From listening to the transcript and the news item, and I think, look, that's the reason we need a national statutory inquiry, and we need to bring people, if indeed this is true, and we are hearing stories from our own inquiries. And as you know, we've got a wonderful girl called Sammy Woodhouse who's working with Rob Bates and another girl called Natalie who are doing fantastic work. I mean, as I've always said, we have to make 5p do the job of at least a quid, given the small amount of money we've got. But we are making inroads, and I think this is symptomatic of what we're finding. In this case, it's the police, but as I say, it's local government. I personally think anybody who is guilty of the kind of crime which clearly these girls are suggesting has happened has to be brought to book and has to suffer the consequences of either not delivering in a position of what I call public responsibility, or indeed aligning themselves with these Pakistani rape gangs who clearly were carrying out the most vile crimes on a systematic basis. I think it was linked to taxi firms, and again, we're trying to push for taxi licensing to be brought into line. Most taxis seem to be registered in Wolverhampton for some reason. I think Wolverhampton has a rather lax record on registering taxis, but people can sit around in taxis and it's not as suspicious as sitting around in a private car. And you know, I think the whole thing is a revolting reflection on a Britain which is going badly off the rails. And until we start to get some honesty and some sort of accountability back into our society, then we're going to continue on the slippery slope downwards. I don't want to be too negative, because I do have a great faith and belief in our history. I'm very proud of what we've achieved as a nation, you know, not only our unwritten constitution and our arguably most successful democratic institutions, which have served us very well until now. So I think the British people too are fantastic. We've got some of the best people in Europe and certainly in the world. But at the moment, we are going badly wrong in terms of our leadership. So I think people are, Kevin, beginning to realise that they have to now stand up for themselves. They can't just, in true British style, sit there and stoically watch what's going on. I think they have now got to stand up for what they believe in and fight for their country, because if they don't, I think you'd agree, we can all feel our country slipping through our fingers, and it's going to, I think, accelerate. And if we get another Labour government, I think the game is over.
Yeah, I think so, you can feel that we're on the brink. We're going to go to break in a minute, Rupert, but a quick comment from you. You're talking about our Labour government. Now, this is a Labour government that over the past couple of days has been sort of positioning itself as the great protector of children due to the Online Safety Act, which to say the least is dubious. It's more like the Suppression of Free Speech Act. But that notwithstanding, they're there, oh, we're keeping children safe, we're keeping people safe. This from the government that didn't want an inquiry into the rape gang scandal, that clearly, actively, Labour politicians all over the country did not keep people safe throughout that saga. And also, of course, this is the Labour government that is letting in thousands and thousands and thousands of undocumented young men of sexually active age about whom we know nothing. And guess what? Their alleged crime rate is soaring. We know of at least 350 charges against asylum seekers all over the country, about 30 of which are serious sex crimes. So this is a government that says, oh no, we're protecting children, we're protecting women, we're keeping the country safe. Well, they're just not, are they?
Well, I think I liken this online safety act to the Fabian Society, Kevin. The Fabian Society is something that runs deep within the Labour Party, and if people don't know about it, they should have a look at it. Its emblem is a wolf in sheep's clothing, and I think this act is a wolf in sheep's clothing. It tries to justify itself on the basis that it's acting in the interests of child safety. The reality is, as you say, it's a backdoor to censorship and to more issues such as that which we see with Lucy Connolly and other what I call miscarriages of logical justice. I think for somebody to be locked up for social media posts when they are letting violent criminals go early and not sentencing rapists of underage girls for, in my view, long enough. We just got all our priorities completely wrong. And I think this Online Safety Act, it's very easy, and Labour often does this. They dress it up as a sort of a virtuous act, which is going to be in everybody's interests, when the reality is it just gives the state more control over our lives every day, a bit like all the COVID response to COVID did. I mean, I think that the powers that be were extremely surprised that Britain meekly allowed itself to be locked down with police patrolling Welsh parks and basically fining people for going out in the street. I mean, the whole thing is quite Orwellian. And as a result of that, I think our police force is now out of control and needs to be brought to heel as well. I don't think the average policeman is a bad person. I think a lot of them are very good people, and I have a very good relationship with a lot of them in Parliament. But I think the head of the beast, the head of the police, the people who run the force, most of those took their lead from people like Cressida Dick, who I'm ashamed to say went to the same private school as I did, Dragon School in Oxford.
I wouldn't boast about that.
and have been, which is fine. It's a very fine school. It didn't always produce great people, but and I think she, like a lot of our leaders, have imbued government with vile wokery, which we just simply don't need, and I don't think the majority of British people want. So this is where I say people have got to stand up and say, no, challenge local government, challenge national government, challenge everybody in a position of authority who is doing something which you think does not reflect the fact that they are a public servant. They are not supposed to be dictating to people how they should live their lives. They're supposed to be serving the public. That's what they are, public servants. And they need to remember that.
Well, listen, let's go to break and let's resume this conversation after these messages, Rupert. So stick around, folks. We'll be back in a minute. Welcome back. I'm still with Independent MP for Great Yarmouth, Rupert Lowe. Rupert, we were talking about the police before the break. Two-tier policing, I think, is our problem, and I think we saw an egregious example of it in Epping last week, where the local community, the very concerned local community, were out in force protesting about their local asylum seeker hotel, the Bell Hotel, in which one of the residents stood accused, was charged with 3 sexual assaults. One of them on a young schoolgirl. So the local community were in a febrile mood. I should say he denies those offences. Now, the police force, the local police, the Essex Constabulary, saw fit during these protests to ship into the middle to escort from the station a load of left-wing stand-up-to-racism Antifa protesters in masks into the middle of the protest. Now, the nature of these protests, you know this. To be fair, I mean, nearly all of the protesters were local people, particularly mothers and fathers worried about their kids, quite rightly. But, you know, the nature of this beast is you will get some right-wing agitators will turn up for the punch-up, and you'll also get left-wingers. Now, there were a few right-wingers hanging around with their St George's flags and all that. The police escorted into the middle of this these left-wing thugs with masks on and their, you know, refugees welcome placards. And then the following day, Ben Julian Harrington, the Chief Constable of Essex, you know, sort of justified this. Worse than that, if you take my point of view, when the trouble started, inevitably, the police loaded the lefties into the van, into their police vans, and gave them a lift out of the area. I would say they're showing great favouritism towards the left-wing agitators, but not so much towards those who they think are right-wing. And by the way, they think that mothers and fathers worrying about the migrants in their midst are right-wing. It's two-tier policing, isn't it?
Without a doubt, Kevin. I mean, I don't know the truth about bussing in these masked
They bust them out. They escorted them in.
Well, they escorted them in. If they did, that's a disgrace. I equally, when you talk about right-wingers having a St George's flag, I don't think there's anything wrong with having a St George's flag. If you're Scottish or you're Welsh, you're encouraged to be proud of your flag.
Agreed.
And one of the things that I think you know is that I would be very keen to reverse devolution. I think the Blairite attempt to divide the UK and basically rekindle a lot of old rivalries was a very bad move. We now have what I call two banana republics, one in Scotland through the Scottish Parliament and one in Wales through the Senedd, where we have hugely expensive regional governments who just during, you only had to look during COVID, they were basically trying to outdo Westminster. And as a result of that, you know, they I think brought the UK into disrepute. So I think Scotland, it's now a banana republic. Its judiciary is in bed with the police, who are basically in bed with politicians, and I think it's a thoroughly unsound structure.
Yeah.
But look, that's another issue. Two-tier policing, I think, does happen. As I say, it comes from the fact that the police force has been turned into a sort of woke example. I mean, they're supposed to police without fear or favour. They're supposed to be completely and utterly impartial, and yet it doesn't appear that that's what they're doing. Now, I don't know the root cause of this. I suspect that the leadership of the police is mainly to blame. I don't think most of the people in the police force are bad news, and I talked to a policeman yesterday from the Met who told me it's a depressing place to be now, and he's going to be leaving and retiring in the next 6 months, which he can't wait to do. So I suspect if you talk to most decent police in the force, they're pretty frustrated.
So I agree that it's the top cops are the problem.
It's the top cops. It's the top cops that are the problem.
And they're a bunch of wokies. They really are. Just before, I know you've got to go in a second. I just want to play you a little bit of footage. It's an exclusive to my programme earlier in the week. I want to get your comments. There's a place called, it's a story about asylum seeker hotels. There are 202, 203, 204 around the country, full of migrants. This one's called the Copthorne Hotel, 16th century building in manicured grounds, golf course adjacent.
Double poster beds.
Yeah, 4 poster beds.
4 poster beds, yeah.
Well, we got an insight into what we're providing for these people. You may have seen this, you know, 4 poster beds. They've got landlines. They can phone to their various home countries. We give them 4 meals a day because in the afternoon we deliver to their rooms special afternoon snacks. There is a constant convoy of lorries full of food, toiletries and necessities coming in. There we are. Also, the police are almost constantly there. Ambulances are turning up. The kids who are there get free taxis to and from school. There's some of the food. It looks very nice. And apparently, according to a guy called Aston Knight, who gave us all this footage, he worked there for 3 months. He said 10 women while he was there, or before he got there, actually gave birth on the premises. We're paying for all of this. So when we talk about asylum seeker hotels and the fact that we're footing the bill, I think most people, Rupert, don't have a clue just what the extent of our expense is. It is vast. This is one story. This is happening all over the country. This is a big one. There's more than 600 migrants there. But it's outrageous, isn't it? Your thoughts?
It is outrageous, Kevin, and I put forward my view, which is that they shouldn't be allowed to settle on the mainland. We should set up a tented camp on an offshore island on the west coast of Scotland or England, or I think somebody said Lundy Island today, but anyway, on an island offshore, so they actually don't come onto our shore until they decide they want to go home, in the same way that Australia processes them on Nauru Island and places like that. But we extraordinarily seem to think it's our job to, as you say, roll the red carpet out, put them in 4-star hotels, give them 4 posted beds, unlimited food, new mobile phones, straight to the top of the housing list, the medical lists, the NHS list, waiting lists, and push the tax-paying British people to the bottom, which is what's happening. So these people do not make a contribution to the UK. Most of them have got a very low IQ. I don't buy the fact that they are asylum seekers. Most of them are young men. They're economic migrants. They travel across multiple safe countries to get here. And as far as I'm concerned, Kevin, we are bonkers to be doing what we're doing. And again, to be expecting hard-working British people to pay their taxes to fund this largesse is outrageous. And really, the people who lead the country should be putting the interests of the British people, who are taxpayers, who are contributors, who've been part of building this country into what it is today, as have their forebears. They're the people whose interests should be being protected. Yeah. So it's basically the most extraordinary perversion of logic and common sense. And unless people stand up, and I think they are beginning to start to stand up. I saw there were some people starting to take a stand in various places today. Yeah. But the problem is, I think a lot of this sort of government, what I call, concern, is about the fact that this is a tinderbox. Yep. And ultimately they're playing with fire. And I think it was Mao who said, if one spark can set off a prairie fire. And I think the government's censorship is because they know that they've got things so wrong. Yeah. The post-war elite have done so much damage to Britain and planted these fighting age young men across the country in hotels, which we're funding, as you say. Mm. Most of these people, as we know, don't go on to contribute to the country. They end up on benefits. As you know, I'm doing my best to get the state to collect the data so we can see, to your earlier point, how much crime is being committed by these people. Yeah. We've had a bit of a win today with the Ministry of Justice, which I posted about on Twitter. So, look, I mean, there's so much wrong and so much that needs to be questioned, that when you're on a show like this, the question is, where do you start? Yeah,
that's right. That's right. I should have it on for about 20 hours, actually.
I mean, where do we start? Where do we finish? There's just so much wrong. It's not with our people. It's with the way that this small minority of people who seem to have a warped view of life, that they are now in positions of influence which they shouldn't be. Yeah, that's what's got to change.
Absolutely. They're putting Britain second and British people second, and they're trying to keep the damage they've done a secret. And that is a recipe for disaster. It really is. Rupert, it's so good to have you on the show. Come on again soon.